Shabbat Shalom, everyone. As you can see at the front door of our synagogue, we have a beautiful glass mezuzah that was actually purchased on a trip to Israel. Every Jewish home needs a mezuzah, and the commandment to have a mezuzah on your doorpost is found in this week's Torah portion. One of the unique features of a mezuzah is that the mezuzah is always, or whether a mezuzah should be placed horizontally. And so the two rabbis compromised and they decided to place it diagonally. But why? And here's lesson number one. When you come into your home, the first thing to remember is that all the members of the household, the husband and the wife, the children, the parents, all have to compromise. In order for there to be shalom bayit, peace and harmony in a home, we have to find the middle path. Sadly, sometimes people are not willing to compromise, to use reason and logic and common sense. We've seen this week the tragic events in Beirut, Lebanon, with this massive explosion killed about 150 people and injured thousands more. And while all these poor people were trapped beneath the rubble, Israel immediately poured out its condolences and support and offered to send crews immediately to help with the rescue mission. But no matter how many overtures Israel made, the answer came back time and again, no, we don't want your help. So much so that in Tel Aviv, in the municipality building, they lit up a flag of Lebanon to show solidarity. And the answers on Twitter that came back were horrific, including one person saying, "We'll light up Tel Aviv with our rockets." And so the message is for the world that the mezuzah has to be a symbol of peace, of compromise, of coexistence, of getting along with one another. Then there's a second lesson that the mezuzah teaches each and every one of us. And that is that the mezuzah reminds us of our Jewish identity. When we come into our homes, we remember that we are Jews, and therefore we have to live in accordance to God's will. You know, today, the world lost one of its greatest rabbis and leaders. Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz passed away at the age of 83. One of the foremost scholars, authors, teachers. And I remember when he came to the Palm Beach Synagogue and spoke in our sanctuary. And I remember reading a story once that he came to a community and he got up to speak. And when he got up to speak at the bima, he said, "I'm very uncomfortable." And everyone looked at him like, "Why would you be uncomfortable?" And he said, "I'm very uncomfortable with the way you situated and positioned me." And then he went on to say, "You have placed me in a position where my back is to the Holy Ark. And how can I speak to you with my back to the Torah scrolls?" And he said, "There's only one way I can do that." And he said, if I too become a Torah scroll. If I now, through my words of Torah, align myself with the Torah and become a conduit for the words of Torah, I become like a Torah scroll. And then I could stand in the presence of the Torah with my back to the Torah because I am one with the Torah. So too, when a Jew walks into his home, they don't turn their back on the mezuzah, but they realize they bring the mezuzah into their home, and they bring the values of the Torah and inscribed upon the mezuzah, the love of God and the mitzvot, into their home. And we become one with Hashem and with the Torah. And finally, the third lesson of the mezuzah is that God watches over our Jewish homes and the Jewish people, and particularly over the land of Israel. As the Torah says, that God neither sleeps nor slumbers, and the eyes upon the Lord are upon the land of Israel all year long. And indeed, if we have to ask ourselves which country is the mezuzah of the world, clearly the mezuzah of the world is Israel. Israel is that country that we were blessed with, that allows us to have protection not only for Jews in Israel, but for Jews all over the world. And if there is one Torah portion that is a love song to the land of Israel, it's this week's Torah portion, Ekev. It talks about the beauty and the richness and the favor of the land of Israel, going back to the days of Moshe Rabbeinu and Joshua, who led the Jews into Israel. And that is why I was so saddened to read about the remarks this week of Seth Rogen. I frankly never heard of him, but apparently he's quite a big celebrity. And in an interview, being interviewed by another Jew, Seth Rogen, who, by the way, his parents met on a kibbutz in Israel, spoke very, very foolishly about the land of Israel and gave a lot of ammunition and fodder to our enemies to attack us in the future. He said things like, you know, it's silly to put all our Jews in one basket, referring to the fact that the majority of Jews today live in Israel. He said, if you want to protect Jews or protect anything, why would you put them all in one place? And the ignorance and the apathy of that comment is shocking and depressing. How a Jewish boy from parents who met on a kibbutz, a Jewish boy who went to Jewish summer camps and even Jewish schools, could say something, knowing our history, knowing that 6 million of our people were murdered and gassed in the concentration camps, to say that why would we need a state of Israel, not realizing that Israel is the protection, the modern day protection of Jews throughout the world, and that we are blessed to have an IDF whose soldiers are committed to protecting Jews anywhere around the world. But the Mezuzah reminds us that Shin Daled Yud, Shomed Daltot Yisrael, God is the ultimate protector who watches over Israel and the Jewish people. And when we align ourselves with the Mezuzah, with Hashem and with His Torah, then we have His protection. But as Jews, we have to be ready to stand up and protect and defend one another. Just like when you come into your home, you are ready to protect the members of your family. We have to realize that Jews throughout the world are one large family, and we have to protect one another. Just conclude with a true story that I heard from Rabbi Honig, who was the Chabad rabbi in Shandu, China. And he said he once went on a trip to America with his family for a few weeks. And when he returned from his trip, the police authorities welcomed him into the neighborhood, and they said, we need to go with you to your house. There have been burglaries in almost all the homes in this neighborhood. We want to escort you into your home to make sure everything's okay. Rabbi Honig and his wife and his kids were nervous. They went to the home, they unlocked the door, and thankfully everything in the home was intact. The robbers had not burglarized his home. He was extremely grateful. A few months later, he got a call from the chief of police who said, I would like to come visit you. He was surprised, but he welcomed him into his home. And he said, we found the burglars who vandalized and burglarized the homes in this community. And when we asked them, why didn't you burglarize the rabbi's home, they said, when we came to the door, we saw some kind of a security alarm system device that we were not familiar with. We know every alarm system and security device, and we know how to deactivate it and get around it. But when we saw this one, we didn't know how to deactivate it, so we didn't want to take our chances. And we actually took a picture of it because we wanted to learn more about this device to know how to get around it in the future. And the chief of police pulls out a picture of the mezuzah on the door of the rabbi, and he said, I'm coming to you because this must be some Israeli invention made in Israel, some special security device. We want to learn more about it so we could have it here in China as well. And of course, Rabbi Honig explained to him about a mezuzah. Yes, the mezuzah is the ancient security device of the Jewish people. It is the faith in God, and when we align ourselves with that faith in God and that trust in Hashem, and we come into our home, we see the mezuzah on a diagonal slant, we remember that only through compromise, through reconciliation, through peace, and through faith and trust in Hashem, will our Jewish homes be safe, secure, protected, and harmonious. Wishing you a Shabbat Shalom U'Mevorach.